Thank you, everyone. And we'd like to welcome those who have joined us again on live stream. Thank you. We welcome those who have joined us again on live stream, and we hope you're going to really enjoy the blessing of this next segment. And I'm going to leave Elena to introduce our next speaker. But just before I do, can I please remind you that as soon as we finish this session, as soon as we finish with the discussion, you'll need to move really quickly to your workshops. Okay, there's not a very big space of turnaround, so thank you, Elena.
Good afternoon. My name is Elena, and today I'm here to introduce Pastor Ritchie Reid. Welcome, Pastor Reid. This afternoon, Pastor Reid will be talking about the differences between generations. I belong to Generation Z, sometimes called iGen. What generation do you belong to?
X.
I have a few questions so that people can get to know you. Firstly, where are you from?
I'm from Queensland and I am currently a missionary to Sydney.
What do you most like about living there?
In Sydney? It's not live streaming to New South Wales, is it? That's really hard. That's a hard question. I love the Harbour Bridge.
You're visiting us here in Adelaide this week, so I imagine you've been to lots of other places. What is your favourite place in the world?
My favourite place in the world would be, I love Harbour Bridge. No. I love home. Going home to Queensland. It's nothing like going home.
Which social media platform do you use the most?
Facebook, Instagram, yeah.
And a random question before you start your presentation. Would you rather fly to the moon or go to the deepest part of the ocean, and why?
I'd like to fly to the moon. And why? I don't know, I just sometimes look up at the moon and think, that'd be fun to walk on the moon, yeah.
Thank you for being here. We are really looking forward to what you have to share with us today.
Thank you. Well done. Thank you very much. It's good to be with you this afternoon. My job with you in this plenary is to look at excuse my voice, but to look at the generation that we find ourselves with. And as you've seen, we've just had from a Gen, was it Z? Did she say Z? To a Generation X, Gen X. And the generations, who knows, give us some of the names of the generations, like you just heard two of them. What are some of the other ones? Ah, yeah, that's it. Thanks, Mum and Dad. Yeah, baby boomers. Baby busters, yes. Sorry? Millennials, yes. Any others? Any other names that you've heard described? Alpha, yep. Alpha is the latest one that 2010 was roughly about the time that it progressed. But like, here we go. So I'm using these from the research company that I was looking at is McQuindle out of Sydney. And here's some of the different ones, and they've named them as the Builders, which are 70 plus years old, baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, and Alpha. Yes, we have some I guess dates there and ages there, but the actual fact is that they aren't necessarily connected to a date. Like, it's actually connected to the social landmarks or the experience. What shapes that generation's worldview is what determines where they sit. So I thought with that, we might go through some of those, and I want to make a bit interaction, make it more... Sorry, I got a cough lolly in my mouth. To interact with you this afternoon and to actually take a look at the different generations, our builders. So here's Grandma wanting to know about Netflix. I want to ask you, what are some of the... When you think of this generation, what are some of the social landmarks or the events that actually shaped this generation? Yes, Depression, the wars, World War One, World War Two, the Great Depression, communism. Vietnam was more the baby boomers. We'll come to that. The bombing of Darwin, for an Australian context. Charles Kingsford Smith. These are some of the... What about? Let's look at technology. What was the technology, the iconic technology for this generation? Radio. Yep. Radio, the wireless. What else was invented in this time when it comes to sorry? Yeah, moving from the horse and buggy into Model T, the Model T Ford, yeah. Although some of us still in the horse and buggy. I was behind some of those in the traffic today. Sorry. The aircraft. What about music? Some of the... Oh, rock and roll, no, a bit early. Yeah. Jazz, swing, Frank Sinatra, bit of a waltz, yeah. What about TV shows, movies? Oh, well, not TV. There was no TV there. Sorry, I heard someone say that. Gone with the Wind, yes. That's what I have here. It's the advent of TV that marks this generation. So the generations are actually composed of what are the things that really shaped their generation. And to understand the different generations, you got to have a look at what actually shaped their worldview. What were the conditions? What were their relationships? What were they going through? What did they look at? Perhaps the question is, in our context, how does a builder worship in our church, in our churches? How do they experience God? There's no wrong answer, and I don't have a one answer, and I don't think there is one answer to it. But when you look at this group, how do you see that in our churches? How do they connect with God? What is it that their connection with God? Any thoughts? Yes.
Ritchie, just a comment that was not mentioned in what you said.
Yes.
So far, it's all been good. I was born just after that generation. Most of that generation went to church.
Yes.
That's the striking difference between then and now.
Yeah, later on I was going to speak to that, but you're right in saying that, because I think the census shows that it was 0.1 or something or other that call themselves that didn't go to church, opposed to the new figures of what we're facing with 60 to 70% today Yes, exactly, yeah. How do they experience God? Anyone want to suggest?
There was really one way of worshipping God. There was set in their way of worship.
Mm-hmm.
Was very hard to use
Yes, yep. Yep. I hear the words like, what would a word, if you heard from one of them, what would they say about the sanctuary? There needs to be reverence, yeah? Reverence. And not that they just say that, we all say about reverence, but the actual style of reverence is more the indication. You were going to say?
I was going to say traditional and conservative.
Traditional and conservative, yeah. And very much, even in their language, the way that they speak is about the Queen's English. It's very formal. As you get down to some of these other generations, even further than mine, you start getting the YOLOs and and the way that they communicate. Yeah. Any other thoughts just on that before I move to the next one?
Morals would have been different in those times.
Sorry?
Morals would have been different.
Morals, yes. Yep. With the stuff that we're facing today in this generation. Yes. Yeah. And just in saying that, the age of marriage and when people got married and moved to work and actually schooling and education and about being and all that takes place within the community and the family and shapes their view of how important community and church and those things are. Yeah. Baby boomers, here they are. What are they spending their kids' inheritance? Or that's my generation you're spending. Tell us, what about the baby boomers? What are the social markers or the things that shape their worldview? Sorry? What was that, Grandad? What? Uncle Steve? Yeah. Sorry, the Vietnam War. Yes, Vietnam War. Yes. A lot of children. Yes, there was a spike for baby boomers with childbirth, sexual revolution, free love. Very much different to their parents' generation. Decimal currency came in. What, rock and roll? The Beatles, yes. Any other singers? I'm all shook up. Yep. Rolling Stones, Johnny O'Keefe. Some of the television shows, colour television came in at that time. Australian Context, Cyclone Tracy. The Olympics. Yeah, it happens every how many? Yeah. Okay, that's good. Sorry? Postmodernism? Yeah, okay. How do looking at our churches, how do we find that this generation, the baby boomers, see and experience God in our church context? When you think about your church, when perhaps there's baby boomers here, how do you experience God? How do you see God? Because I think that's very important as we understand the generations and then to understand each other and to actually worship in this intergenerational worship context, to understand how the other generations actually experience and know God. Any thoughts?
There were new Bible translations coming out where the traditional was King James. The other thing is you had more gospel music taking the place of the hymn.
Yes, yeah, yep. Which was a huge change, and I think there might be even some churches still sing from the old hymn book, or the old hymn book, or.
Probably around the 60s, it became more fashionable that it was okay to say you didn't believe in God and all that rubbish.
Yeah.
Whereas earlier on, it would have been suppressed into the herd. But in that particular generation, which is our generation, we felt free to speak up if we didn't agree with something we said.
Yeah. And I think just on that, the song that Bill Gaither wrote, Because He Lives, is focused around that whole generation and what was going on with the Vietnam War, and with the thought that the world was going to end, and it was all that this child can face uncertain days because he lives. Yeah. Any other thoughts on baby boomers?
The culture shock. You walked in a fairly full church, but the music was so different. You talked about, rock music and all that. It wasn't in the church, and you didn't necessarily expect it in the church. But you weren't accustomed to sort of like organ music,
Yes.
A big culture shock.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were listening, that baby boomers were listening to this music on their radios or whatever, but church was still in that tradition. So, yeah. Which is interesting when it comes to their kids and how they relate then to trying to hold to what their parents, but then yet still trying to connect with their kids, yeah.
Yeah, this generation is selling their homes and buying the riches, carrying out and buying, it's been an inheritance and coming along.
Yes, we see them get stuck behind them going to Queensland as they all go up for the warm weather, and then you get them as they're coming back. Yeah, baby boomers. Yeah, we feel hard done by, no. Generation X, here it is. This is me. Any other Generation X's here with us? Yeah. Is this you? This me? I'm getting old. Or is the supermarket is the supermarket playing great music? You're going through the supermarket singing these old songs. All right. What are some of the things? Let's just have a quick look at some of the things that social markers for this generation. What happened for my generation? I remember the Berlin Wall falling. Sorry? Communism? Yep, communism and the fall of communism. Yes. Technology changing. Yes, this generation was first to start to see, I remember the old typewriter, return carriage, and then we moved to Commodore 64s and stuff like that. Yeah, movies, some of those things, E.T., MTV, found its way. Music, for any of you guys, Madonna, Midnight Oil, Nirvana, In Excess. We'll keep moving on because we're running out of time. Generation Y, where are you? What if I told you you can eat without posting it on Instagram? This Generation Y. Right. What some of their key social markers relate to September 11, yeah? They're that generation that saw, I guess, the turn of the millennial, Y2K, the Bali bombing, Columbia shooting, Thredbo disaster, speaks of here. Some of their movies, Titanic. Won't tell you how, I won't spoil it for you, but the boat sinks in the end. Reality TV was a big thing. It was always that voyeurism into reality TV. The internet coming on. Generation Z, here's my friend up the back. You get a ribbon, everyone gets a ribbon. Everyone's a winner. We see this with this generation. This is a generation that saw the GFC, the Iraq War, the tsunamis, the Arab Springs, WikiLeaks. These are the sort of things that 3D movies, smart televisions. This was a generation that was MacBook, iPads, Google, Facebook, Twitter, you name it, it happened. What about this generation here? This is the new generation that is on the scene. There is two according to the research here, there's 2,500,000 Generation Alphas being born globally each week. This is a fast-growing number of what's characteristic of this generation. What are the key? Yes, the iPhone. Yeah, the generation before was selfies, and this generation selfies. The fact FaceTime. I've got one of these kids, and like she knows her way around the iPhone better than we do. She rings people on it. I saw a thing on the television the other day. Some kid had bought all this stuff, all these toys from Amazon on her mother, and she'd even processed the next day delivery, and so all these boxes turned up. This generation is a fast growing generation. And this is a generation, when we look at Generation Alpha and we look at Generation Y, Z and Y, this is a generation perhaps that we're talking about when we're saying we're losing our kids in the church. And Generation Alpha is the kids of Generation Y. The way that here's a percentage of religion with any religion. Percentage of Australians who do not identify with any religion by age. 15, 24, there's 23%, down to 65 where it's 88%. These are across the denominations and across Australia. It's not related. We're in there at the present time. I want to leave this thought with you as we're finishing off. The rarest commodity today is not information. See, when I'm preaching, these generations can pull out their iPhone and pull up my sermon and 100 sermons that are preached on the same thing. Information is very readily available. But the rarest commodity today is community. And this is what though it would fool you, society would fool you to think, as you understand, that we're connected, but yet this generation and these generations aren't connected. You look at the suicides and online bullying and all these issues that pertain to this generation. Our church has to, and where our church sits in who it's reaching, perhaps, is an information generation of baby boomers and perhaps builders, where that information, you go to the town hall, you hear the speaker, you take in the information. This generation's are looking for community rather than information because they can get it anywhere. In fact, the worrying statistics are showing that they're actually, it's now peer information sharing. Rather than in the old days, you'd go to the elders and you'd get the information. Now they're actually going to each other, which then immaturity, or the old saying, the blind leading the blind. We're going to actually stop the filming, and we're going to go into a couple of questions to talk around at your table. And we'll be coming back to the filming for those that are live streaming. We'll be back at 7:35 for our last plenary. Those who are staying here will be going into workshops. I'm not sure what time, 7:35 Adelaide time. So thanks for joining in. These questions that at your table, which generation is missing from your church and why? Which generation is missing from your church and why? The next one, I'll just go through them, then I'll come back to leave them up there. What would it take for your church to change this trend? Is your church multi-generational or intergenerational? Now that's an interesting question, because is there a difference? between multi-generational and intergenerational? So those are the questions that I want you to pose at your tables, having thought about the generations within our church. What generation is missing from your church and why?